Are you wondering what's going to happen to the Brisbane property market this year and beyond? Well, Brisbane was the strongest property market back in 2021, exhibiting astonishing growth. Many locations experienced up to 30%, even 40% house price growth. But as growth slowed across Australia in 2022, Brisbane's housing markets, well, they actually continued to perform strongly for the first half of last year, but now Brisbane market's in the slump phase of the property cycle. So to discuss what's ahead for the capital city of Queensland and whether you should even consider buying, holding or selling, today I'm joined by Brett Warren, National Director of Metropole Property Strategists, who's based in Brisbane, and we're going to talk about the underlying fundamentals of the Sunshine State's capital city. So welcome to today's show.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Are you kicking yourself for missing the great Brisbane property boom of 2022? Are you wondering if Brisbane's still a good place to invest? Brisbane was a red-hot property market and now it's officially gone cold as property prices are recalibrating. So what's ahead for the Sunshine State? That's what I want to ask Brett Warren, National Director of Metropole Property Strategists. Hi, Brett.
Hi, Michael. Good to be with you. And yeah, look, obviously the boom, property prices in some cases went up in excess of 40% in some suburbs, which is quite amazing. And obviously at the moment, it's probably come back a little bit, probably close to about 10% they're suggesting. So, of course, that's an average. As we talk about, there's not just one property market or one certain area in a property market. So some areas have performed worse and other areas have probably done a little bit better. And I know some of the areas we buy in, look, it hasn't even really changed, Michael. It's probably softened a little bit. So, I guess the next steps, they're suggesting there's more uncertainty. Property prices could fall anywhere from 5 to 20%, according to some media reports, and that's obviously fueling the flames with high inflation and interest rates set to continue to climbing. So, I guess with all that uncertainty, why would you be investing at all? And if that's the case, should you consider Brisbane, Michael? I guess that's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Exactly. Okay, so let's make it clear. During the property boom, prices went up everywhere, not just in Brisbane, but all over Australia. Now, we're not suggesting Brisbane's the only place to invest. Today, we're going to investigate the Brisbane property market, and in future podcasts, we're going to be talking about other capital cities as well. But what I guess you're pointing out, Brett, is that the markets are now fragmented again, but that's the way it's happening all around Australia. And is it the right time to invest? Well, I don't know. I don't know people's circumstances, but I know you and I have been investing for a long, long time, and we actually don't try and time the right time to invest. The right time to invest is when you've got your finances under control, when you're ready, and not to try and time the market, even though if you were going to do that, I'd be suggesting this is a great window of opportunity before later on this year, interest rates are going to peak, and that'll be sooner rather than later. Inflation's almost certainly peaked, and the figures are starting to show that. And then confidence will come back. So I think you've really got to think more about long-term fundamentals and long-term investing, not what's going to happen this week or next week, Brett.
Yeah, I think you make an interesting point there. I think, look, everyone probably disagrees when the market will bottom and what timing it will be, but I think most serious commentators suggest it will likely happen this year. So with that in mind, it is a good time to reset. And look, property investors tend to focus on the next opportunity, the next area, the next hotspot, whatever it may be. But I think the other distinguishment we need to make, Michael, is talk about creating wealth. And if you're looking to create wealth, you've really got to take a longer term play because you're looking further down the track. So those fundamentals are really, really going to be important. I couldn't tell you what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years, but I probably have more, I guess, of an understanding of what will happen over a decade or more. And as we always say, there's going to be a boom, a property bust. There's always a recession or a black swan kind of event thrown in that kind of no one saw coming. And, if we can learn from that and understand that, history will suggest if we've bought the right property in an investment grade location in the right area, history will suggest you'll do quite well over that time. And again, that's why we always get back to those longer term fundamentals, which is critically important.
Well, I have some trolls on, particularly YouTube, that call me a property bull. Now, I think I'm realistic. I can see the challenges ahead. I can see the headwinds for our property market, but I can also see the long-term fundamentals for Australia, Australia's economy, and Australia's property markets being good. And then within those property markets, there's many, many segments. And Brisbane, being the third biggest capital city in Australia, has got very strong fundamentals. So if we accept the fact that, inflation is going to be around for a couple more years, and yes, the Reserve Bank is going to try and slow our economy down, but we're unlikely to go into recession, let's look at the capital city fundamentals of Queensland. And we're talking about Brisbane in particular, though, because there's not just one property market in Queensland, is there?
No, that's right. And look, I think the interesting thing is probably good timing, Michael, because CommSec has just released one of their State of the State reports, and it's showing that for the first time in 13 years that Queensland and obviously Brisbane's probably head of the list. So that's a positive. And what we're seeing at the moment is the economy is really starting to ramp up and steadily expanding, with great job opportunities and creation in a diverse range of industries. And it's not just the local market. Business communities are growing here as well. I think there's certainly a cost of living issue at the moment, but businesses are also suffering from that as well. And if they can, reduce their costs and look at other opportunities, Brisbane's certainly starting to become more of an attractive alternative. And you can already see the huge commitment with over $50 billion going into the infrastructure projects with the Brisbane Metro, the Cross River Rail, the Queen's Wharf, and also the airport development as well. So these are creating, hundreds and thousands of jobs and really providing a significant boost to the economy.
Well, another factor underpinning Brisbane's economy is the tourism sector. That quietened for a while internationally, but I guess it benefited from local tourism over the last couple of years. But it suggested that Brisbane's now attracting over 7 million visitors annually. Wow.
Yeah, look, and Brisbane's going to benefit from that because it's the entry point to the state and probably the in point and exit point. So, it's certainly helping the economy here as well. Certainly as our city starts to expand, as we head towards the Olympic Games, I think it'll only get stronger, Michael.
Well, one of the factors then that we believe is going to underpin the long-term fundamentals of the Brisbane property market is the economy. And why? Because that creates jobs. And if people have jobs, they need somewhere to live. And if they're getting higher paid jobs, they can afford to pay more. And so really what we're looking for in the Brisbane property market are areas where these higher paid workers want to live and can afford to, are prepared to pay to live. And this is the gentrifying inner and middle ring suburbs. The face of the Brisbane suburbs as you drive through them is changing, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you wouldn't recognise it if you've been away even for just 10 years and you come back and there's just so much happening in and around those areas. It's really getting a facelift and being more modernised. And like you said, it's being transformed into a bit of a newer kind of modern world city, as you mentioned.
Sure. So that's underpinned by the population growth. The population growth's been steadily increasing. It's averaging about 2.5% per annum over the last decade or so. So it's about 2.5 million people at the moment, and suggested it's going to reach 3 million people over the next decade or so. It's going to, interestingly, I read that Brisbane is the third largest city in the world. And I thought, hey, what am I reading? Now, they weren't talking about population. They were just talking about physically how big it is.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
Sure. But the population, well, that's growing, and that's happening in two ways. I mean, natural population growth, but definitely migration. People are moving there because of the climate, because of employment opportunities, because of the lifestyle. It happened locally. People moved from Queensland from Victoria and New South Wales in particular during COVID. But I can understand why. It's a great place to live.
It's a great place to live, and it's still relatively affordable. I think we used to joke that you'd be able to get two properties in Brisbane compared to a Sydney or a Melbourne. I mean, that's starting to change slightly, but certainly more affordable, and especially for younger families who can move here for the jobs now and probably live a bit closer to all the amenities and lifestyle precincts thereafter.
Brett, if we're looking at where to invest in the Brisbane market, and we're looking for areas that are going to outperform, we're looking for the supply and demand fundamentals to be in the right proportions. Over the last year or two, Brisbane property has experienced really strong demand, but there's actually been very little new supply coming on stream.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? I think we're facing a bit of a housing shortage around the country, and that's starting to slow a little bit as well. But certainly supply and demand is really, really critical. We aren't creating enough homes and the right type of homes. And also in the inner to middle ring, the 5 to 15 kilometres in Brisbane, there's no more land available. So I guess one of the mistakes I see a lot of investors making is just assuming that 20, 25 kilometres, 30 kilometres from Brisbane will still do well because it's done well in Sydney and Melbourne. That's certainly not the case. So you've got to be very particular because we don't have that urban sprawl. And that population is going to continue growing in those locations because that's where the bulk of the jobs are. But there's still very low to no supply in those locations. So we're already seeing attractive rental yields. There's a shortage of accommodation for tenants, and that's certainly driving, I guess, yield prices higher, which is important, and also property prices. And certainly the COVID-19 pandemic brought a lot of that forward, didn't it, with people from Melbourne and Sydney kind of moving to the more affordable and spacious areas and better locations. And that led to a huge amount of demand for housing in these kind of locations we were talking about.
Sure. Well, and Brisbane Metropole manage properties for clients from all over Australia, and we actually have very, very low vacancies. In fact, we haven't had as few vacancies as this since we first started. So yields are increasing, rents are increasing. And while overall the property market is experiencing a flat patch, I guess what I'm trying to explain to people listening to us today is that over the long term, fundamentals are strong. And in my mind, this is creating a window of opportunity to get into the Brisbane market before the market picks up again. In due course, interest rates are going to peak, inflation is going to peak, and the Brisbane market will reset. But there are some really good long-term fundamentals for Brisbane as well. I mean, you mentioned it a minute ago, hosting the Olympics is going to ensure that Brisbane's put on the global map. A lot of people see the Opera House in Australia. When they think about Sydney, they often think of the sporting venues in Melbourne and the culture in Melbourne. And Brisbane is the new world city, but the Olympics is going to put it on the map. But it also means that it's not only going to attract overseas immigrants there. People want to go to see the city where the Olympics was. I know I did that when I went overseas, so that's going to be good. But between now and then, it's going to create lots of jobs for highly paid, not just labourers building things, but also knowledge workers, Brett.
Yeah, I think that's a big question mark, wasn't it? Because we've got a huge round of infrastructure spending at the moment with all of those projects I mentioned previously. But it was kind of like, what happens next? What's next for Brisbane? I mean, it just kind of slowly happens. But all of a sudden, we've got the Olympics. And, if you dig into the detail, there's going to be more people moving and population is going to grow probably by about 16% by the time it hosts the Olympic Games. And it's interesting to see.
Sorry, let's stop for a sec. That is a huge number. In other words, it's going to be almost another Canberra built in Brisbane between now and then. And Brisbane's town planning is pretty strict, isn't it? So you're going to wonder where you're actually going to put them all.
That's right. They're not pro-development, certainly in those inner to middle ring suburbs we were talking about. And it's interesting, Michael, the bulk of those people are actually, tipped to swing towards Brisbane, Greater Brisbane, by that area. Most of the majority of the population for the first time will be living over that 50% mark, will actually be living in Brisbane. So, quite contrary to the old story about people moving to the regions. And I think while that will still continue, the bulk of people are still going to be living in Brisbane and our CBDs. And if that huge amount of demand is starting to sweep through and there's no supply, as we spoke about, those longer term fundamentals over the next decade are really positive and really strong.
Brett, interstate investors often bring with them their thoughts about how one wants to live. So in Melbourne, we live differently to in Brisbane. And I remember when you bought one of your many investments in Melbourne, you bought a villa unit, which would be totally out of place in Brisbane, but you had the faith to understand that's how locals want to live in Victoria, and it's performed really, really well. Similarly, if you go to Brisbane, you've really got to understand that, particularly in the middle ring suburbs, people want lifestyle, and they're wanting not to live in apartments. They're not wanting to live in the smaller boxes that in some states we'd call villa units. So you can't bring your thoughts in. So Queenslanders are a very different style of accommodation, the Queensland home, to other states.
Yeah, so you're right. It's the macro perspective. You've got to get the right area, the right location, but it's also the type of property in the right area as well. So, apartments are family-sized apartments in amazing locations are very highly sought after. But if you're 20 kilometres from the city, a townhouse or a villa unit or apartment's probably not the right option in Brisbane. We kind of see people pull that up. So getting the right property within the right area and the right type of style, as you mentioned, the Queenslander style is very charming and very character-driven and emotional, and people really love it. So that's important. But Michael, also some of the things we see is the way we live. Brisbane like free-flowing spaces out to lifestyle out the back, and we've got a great climate to be able
because of the climate, isn't it?
It is, and that indoor-outdoor living is really, really important, and it's probably not as important in the colder regions as it is in Brisbane. But having that free-flowing lifestyle precinct, lifestyle area and location, the indoor-outdoor living is really, really important.
Now, a lot of people are moving to Brisbane, and if you're thinking about those gentrifying suburbs, a lot of it is millennials in the family formation stages of their life. So I know we have found, doing very detailed research in Brisbane, that school zones make a big difference, don't they?
Yeah, and when you are going through that family formation stage, Michael, you may remember that. It's certainly a hot
grandkids
topic.
now, Brett. It's grandkids.
Well, it's certainly a hot topic. My daughter's considering high school, and she's still quite young, so we don't know a lot about the Brisbane market. We're both not from Brisbane originally, so understanding the school catchments and where this is and where that is and what the most demand schools are, you kind of got to balance it out with the numbers, because there's certainly some data-driven suggestions around the best schools and the ones that perform the best, and also the emotion and values that you want your child to grow up in. But certainly that family formation stage, that's a real key critical decision-making process.
Sure. So what we're suggesting is, over the long term, there are really strong fundamentals for Brisbane, but there isn't one Brisbane property market. And as I think I've said a minute ago, I see 2023 as the year that the Brisbane property market is going to reset. It's going to reach a trough. Once buyers and sellers see that inflation's under control, interest rates stop rising, they're going to step back into the market. And it's not going to boom again, not anytime soon. But anyone who buys an A-grade home or an investment-grade property in Brisbane at the moment is going to look back in a couple of years' time and recognise they bought a bargain. Now, interestingly, Brett, we're seeing a huge amount of interest at Metropole from clients from Western Australia. And it's interesting that even though the Perth market's doing well and there are opportunities there, it's actually been, I don't know why they're suddenly getting a lot more confidence, but they're all seeming to come to the East Coast, including a couple of real estate professionals who are putting their money in Brisbane rather than their home market.
It is interesting, isn't it? And being from Western Australia myself, Michael, I know that it's like that a little bit as well. And I know the kind of people over there. So I think they've been through a pretty good time over there in the last couple of years. Like you said, property prices have grown. They're probably looking where to put their funds. They understand that WA is a good market. And I actually think WA will do pretty well in the next couple of years. But again, looking longer term, it's a bit of a mining town. It's volatile, and your money's not as safe, and your returns aren't as strong. So I think the next logical thing is looking to over the East Coast, and at the moment Brisbane's catching everyone's attention because of these types of things we're speaking about. Probably relative affordability. It's probably comparable on prices with Perth and the market over there. So certainly we are seeing a bit of an influx of the West Aussies, I guess, coming over and looking to invest and put their money into an area that has good long-term fundamentals, with the Olympics and the New World City being developed, and they're really confident in what they're seeing.
But, disclaimer, you're not going to get a bargain. There are really few A-grade homes on the market and investment-grade properties on the market. And I know our buyers agents have got a list of clients they're looking for at the moment. But I also hear through you their regular frustration that there are buyers out there, home buyers in particular, who have decided it's time to get in the market before it fully resets. So don't look for a bargain. But we've never done that anyway, Brett, have we?
No, that's right. I'd be worried if my buyer's agents come and said to us, we've found something 50 grand under market value. It just never happens. I think it's good to buy a time where you don't have to pay emotionally inflated prices like we were probably 6 or 12 months ago, and probably like we will have to in 6 or 12 months' time when there's more demand in the market. And, like you said, it's not going to run away, but it'll certainly be a stronger market. And it's a great opportunity at the moment to look at those kinds of things.
So just to make it clear, there's not one Queensland property market, not even one southeast Queensland property market. We're not talking about the Sunshine Coast or the Gold Coast today. Are there opportunities there? Clearly there are. But the question is, where are the better long-term opportunities based on wages growth, demographic changes, population growth, and we believe it's in the Queensland property market. But you can't just go off and buy any property, and you can't just fly in, fly out and find any property. It really starts by putting a plan together and planning to become the person you plan to become. And that's what we do at Metropole. Brett and his team will sit down with you and work out where you are, where you want to head, and put a strategic plan together for you to ensure that you take advantage of the opportunities. Now, Brett, we mentioned it in our previous chats, how our clients at Metropole have had their results audited, and they're 7.3 times more likely than the average investor to own 6 or more investment properties. In other words, to be in that top percentage of property investors. And that's because they're making good decisions. And so to make good decisions, you've got to get the right advice. And so before we even talk about a property, we put a plan together, because the property you eventually buy is going to be the physical manifestation of all those decisions you've had to make and make in the right order. So if you want to take advantage of the current window of opportunity in the Brisbane property market, go to metropole.com.au, and Brett and his team would be more than happy to have a chat with you. So, Brett, I'm actually coming up to Brisbane next week. When is it? Wednesday and Thursday. I always love coming up to Queensland, and then we're going to be up in Queensland for Wealth Retreat in a little while as well. So it's somewhere I've travelled to, I guess, every year for holidays for years with my kids, but it has really grown up. The Brisbane market used to be, and the Queensland market was a big country town. No more, is it?
No, it's not. And it's certainly the diverse range of people coming here, and it's really adding to the vibe in the economy and the market. It's quite exciting. It's a good time to be in Brisbane.
Okay, well, fantastic. So is Brisbane the only place to invest? No. It depends upon your budget. It depends where else you own properties. Can we suggest that Brisbane's going to outperform Sydney or Sydney's going to outperform Melbourne? No, because there isn't a Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne property market. You've got to buy the right property in the right location, in the right state, and that's what we'll help you with by putting a plan together. And Brett, let's get together soon and we can talk about some of the other property markets.
Sounds good. We'll see you up here next week.
Look forward to it, mate. Bye.
Thanks, Michael. Bye.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
Today, in our mindset message, I'd like to discuss with you what success looks like. Now, it's fair to say we're living in interesting times, isn't it? And if you're following people on social media, you're seeing them making success, creating success, launching lucrative careers through YouTube, video platforms, Instagram. They're getting thousands of social media followers, aren't they? Now, good luck to those who are doing it. And of course, some of them in these celebrity-driven eras lose sight of what success really means. You see, instant success is easier to achieve than long-lasting success. And the last thing you want is a flash-in-the-pan success story. So, in the teachings I give in my podcasts, in my blogs, in my videos, in my books, I want people to learn the fundamentals of achieving success based on a long-term vision. Now, success that doesn't last isn't really success anyway, is it? So I thought I'd just take a moment to discuss with you what success looks like. Let's start off with what success is not. Success isn't about showing off. While financial freedom is a big part of success, the truly well-off, they don't flaunt it. I know people will show you on the Instagram their fancy cars and their beautiful clothes, but having a lot of money is a reflection of how hard you've worked, and you should be proud of it. But using it to show off with displays of wealth, in my mind, that's tacky. Success isn't about buying more things, because once you start to achieve financial freedom, it's tempting to go and buy more things. But my advice is always to be very careful about what you spend your money on. Pick a few luxuries that you're going to enjoy. Spend your money on those. And then save the rest. Invest the rest. Of course, success isn't about keeping up with others either, is it? One of the main barriers of financial freedom I've found is the tendency to want to keep up with the Joneses. We start earning a bit more money, so we move into a higher wealth echelon. We get nicer cars, we get fancier appliances. In the old days, you'd go on fancier holidays. That's hard to do at the moment, isn't it? But we keep up with wealthy friends, and that's expensive. And many people don't stop to ask themselves, do they even need the latest new iPhone or the latest car? They're just doing it because everyone else is doing it, and that gets expensive. Success isn't about winning. If you're striving for something just to prove a point to somebody else, then you're not really chasing your own success story. Forget about equating success with beating the opposition. It's about your own measure of achievement. So what is success? Well, we've all got our own ideas of success, but here's my version. I think success is the freedom to shape your own life. I think this is the number one reason many of our clients at Metropole want to achieve success. It's not the money that matters so much, but the freedom that the money gives, the choices. It means they could work less if they want to, while others it means travelling more. It could mean freedom and time to learn new skills or provide a more comfortable retirement or give back to the community. In my mind, success is reaching your potential. I'm a big believer that we've all got the gift that gives us the chance to do something extraordinary with our lives. We all have that ability. It could be starting a business. It could be helping others. It could be leaving a legacy. But whatever it is, there's no mistaking the feeling of work that satisfies the deep need in you. That's success. Following your own track. Sometimes in order to achieve that, you need to go down rabbit holes that others wouldn't go down or follow a gut feeling that makes no sense to friends or family. Success is the courage to listen to those instincts and follow your own path, to overcome adversity. Often we don't give ourselves credit for how far we've come and the hurdles we've jumped over. You may not have achieved all your goals yet. Let's be honest, who has? But overcoming adversity or surviving tough situations, surviving 2020, hey, that's definitely a measure of success. Your relationship with others is a good measure of your success. There's no point in amassing a fortune if you step on so many people along the way that you haven't got friends or family left talking to you. In my mind, good relationships with your family, your spouse, your clients all stem from the same ability, that is to maintain healthy relationships. It's what psychologists call high EQ, not IQ, but emotional quotient. It's that underrated trait. Success also is investing in the future. Successful don't just spend their money, they invest it. They reinvest it. They realise that to spend money on assets that appreciate, such as expensive cars, rather than things that appreciate, such as residential property, that's self-defeating. Success is about planning for your future. So to summarise, success isn't about how much money you've got in the bank. I know that's a cliche, but it's a good one. It's not to say that money isn't important. It is. Money is important in those areas of life where it's important, and it's not at all important in other areas of your life. Now, sure, any problem that money can solve isn't a problem, so money is important. But the point I'm trying to make is use the money to give you the freedom that you want in life rather than as a status symbol. Then you'll be successful. Well, thanks for spending the last little while with me, and I hope you got some benefit from this show. If you did, and you know somebody else who'd also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. There's a share button on every podcast app. On Apple Podcasts, there's 3 little buttons down the bottom. Press it and share it, or just tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. I hope you're going to be doing them a favour, and you'll definitely be doing me a favour and helping me in my quest to make as many people as possible financially literate. Now, there's ways of catching up with me between these shows. Just look for Michael Yardney on social media, or why not join my private Facebook group? Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group. And I have a way of saying thank you to you for subscribing to this podcast. Go to podcastbonus.com.au. There'll be a link in the show notes, podcastbonus.com.au, where you can get a bunch of ebooks and reports. My way of saying thank you. And when you've got time, why not listen to some of the old podcasts? There's individual lessons in each of those that I think would be helpful for you. I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney Podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael, but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?